it was quite controversial and a very interesting read. But nonetheless, if you're a fan of Top Gear or driving in general, that's a great one. Holy smokes, it's episode 30 already. You see, a little while ago, I wanted to get back into reading. Fell out of it. When you don't have to do it for school, it's kind of arguable whether it's pleasure or not. I know a lot of people like to do it. I didn't, and now I've kind of got back into it because of the subject matter. When looking for that subject matter, I couldn't find anything. I tried Google searching, I tried looking at magazines. There is a very minimal amount of suggestions when it comes to automotive or racing inspired books in terms of lists. So I thought that after starting a bit of a collection here, which was my goal of getting back into reading and tying in my passion of automotive and car stuff, I'd bring to you my top 10 list, at least to date. So with that said, let's dive right in. Number 10, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by, I'm just going to read this here, Robert Pirsig. The thing with this book is it's about motorcycle maintenance, yes, but it gets lost a lot in the title, simply because this is a little bit more than an automotive or motorcycle build kind of book. This is actually more along the relationship in terms of romance and psychological relationship between the actions that we take in life. And that's why it kind of goes a little deeper. It basically talks about, the friendships of the author with regards to a friend who, just takes their bike to the dealer, gets it fixed, talks about a long motorcycle tour on an old Honda motorcycle with his son. But it's more so about the relationship both between working and finding the peace of working on your bike, but also the relationships and how they develop. The idea that you actually have a point to life is a little bit more involved than just twist. There's more of a focus and mantra and, taming the frustration of working on certain things, as we all do when we work on anything. And it really speaks to that in this book. So it's more than just, motorcycles and maintaining them. It really speaks to the mantra around peace and the romance of doing such things. It is not my favorite, but it is definitely a great place to start, and everyone should probably read this one. It is really, really good and quite profound. Number 9, Monaco. Now, I could probably and might do a future episode just based on the Senna versus Prost books, because there are so many.
I don't really understand the point.
But Monaco is by the author of Senna versus Prost, Malcolm Foley. Monaco is still one of those principalities that still has a king, a queen, a prince, and all that jazz, but there is a lot of money and beauty in this city. And it's a bit of travel locked in with the cars, the drivers, the managers, the whole aura that comes with Formula One and the city, because it really is historic. I definitely recommend. It's a great read. A more modern book, like it's done fairly recently in 2016. Definitely a great read, especially if you're an F1 fan. Number 8, Ben Collins, The Man in the White Suit. So this was actually quite controversial. The premise of the book is that Ben Collins, who we all now know was one of the Stigs, but the longest tenured Stig, decided to just come out with it. Top Gear kept the character hidden for a reason. It developed a bit of an aura around the character. What Ben did was to say, you know what, I'm really not getting enough credit compared to the other 3 hosts and journalists and not making as much money. And that was maybe a little bit selfish, but it kind of comes down to the book. And it is a really good read. It talks about the behind the scenes and more so his career and what led to getting to the white suit, as well as a perspective of being the Stig and being in the white suit. I don't know if it would hold up now, but at the time that this came out, when it kind of broke down that he's like, I'm out, I'm no longer the Stig, I might as well write a book and make some money, it was quite controversial and a very interesting read. But nonetheless, if you're a fan of Top Gear or driving in general, that's a great one. What are we at here? 10, 9, 8, 7. Yes, I can count to numbers. Number 7, Making It Faster. These guys really talk about making cars faster in their experience. It's a very easy read, a little bit technical, but it's actually really easy in terms of reading. I know it looks large, but I'm going to give you an anecdote as to why I love this book so much. The idea that racing is really just a matter of trying to cheat within the rules, because everyone wants to be the fastest, and sometimes it takes that little bit extra. So in the Trans Am series that they were running at the time, they had developed a really good suspension, which I believe was on a Trans Am Camaro, That's not the point. What happened is they didn't want the other team seeing it. So they, put a cover over the rear windshield so no one could look into the car while it was in the pits or, not racing. What ended up happening is they put buttons to snap on this cover easily and quickly and it would stay on. But what they found out was the buttons on the tail part of the roof ended up creating vortices that generated more downforce on the rear wing. So they kind of slid that under, got more downforce without having to modify the body. That was not in the rules. So that was a neat little find. A lot of cool anecdotes like that. And I love that when it comes to engineering and racing. There's a lot of good stories like that. And on that bombshell, we come to number 6. Very straightforward. Again, another Top Gear oriented book. It is the most famous car show in the world. This is not written by any of the hosts. This is written by one of the writers. Richard Porter is the author writer. It gives you a bit of genius into the background of how it works, what they do, how they write, but all the inner workings of the show. Similar to how like Ben Collins was about the Stig, this is more so about the show in general. And it was during an era where it seemed like money flowed endlessly and all the ideas were new. So that's kind of a really cool thing in terms of the back end. So recommend that one. Book number 5. You may or may not have heard of Guy Martin. He is a motorcyclist, racer, probably the craziest man in the Isle of Man when it comes to motorcycle racing. He is incredibly quick, but is also a diesel truck mechanic in Europe and one of the hardest guys to understand. I believe he's Irish and his accent is just incredibly tough to understand when you watch him.
It was bloody hard work. It was hard work coming up in the van.
But he is incredibly fast and has one of those...
It was bloody hard work. It was hard work coming up in the van.
I downed a bunch of Red Bull type of mentalities. I don't think that's the case. He just seems incredibly hyperactive, and that comes through to his book and talking about his experiences. When you're dead, you're dead. It's a great one. It talks about his experiences. And the reason why I hinge on this one being a great book is because his experiences are different than most, a little bit more on edge, but also inversely, he's very calm at times, kind of zen with regards to, the maintenance and the very simple things that he enjoys, but he is blisteringly fast, absolutely hilarious to read about, some good experiences there to share and read. Number 4, Jason Plato's How Not to Be a Racing Driver. I actually just finished this one and it kind of led me to think, it's about time that I talk about this, because you may or may not have noticed there's a lot of similarities in the books that I like and what I think are good books. And it's the personality. Some racers have more of a personality than others. Just because you were able to have scotch before running around a track in the 1950s doesn't make you necessarily an interesting person, a talented person, but maybe not interesting. And some of the individuals in the books that I've talked about are truly just nuts. You have to be something special or different. And I can tie that through all the different types of racers. If we go back to Senna versus Prost, they were different in terms of personalities as well. That's for another day. Jason Plato definitely has a screw loose. He is a journalist. He was on 5th Gear. Interesting fact, he tried out for Top Gear. I believe he just didn't make it. Very successful touring car driver.
Going really tight to the inside now. He's got to defend that inside line. Plato's giving him a bit of a nudge. Wink, he's through. He is through. He's into 3rd place.
He's got a lot of cool anecdotes. The way he goes about trying to become a racing driver is just hilarious. He has a lot of things that he did that just make you laugh out loud. You're like, I can't believe you got away with this. I can't believe you do those things. But also talks about his upbringing in terms of how family life and family togetherness brought him to where he is. And that was really, really nice. So a family man, a racing man, Jason Plato is absolutely hilarious. A good read. That lands in at number 4. Hardcover. So number 3, and very similar to the book Making It Faster, just maybe a little bit higher level, is How to Build a Race Car by Adrian Newey. Adrian Newey is a very successful designer, engineer. There's a long list of attributes that he's got in a professional manner, but this talks about all the different things he goes through and all the learnings along the way of building different cars. Strictly Formula One, but it also comes onto some other stuff. It is just fascinating. It is very comprehensive. It talks about the tie-in between how his family life reflects into, or romantic life will reflect into his work life, and the balance there. So you can kind of draw out the balance of, the right and the wrong of where to spend your time. But It also shows that when you really are passionate about something and you put time into it, it can definitely yield results. Fascinating to talk about the different finds in terms of, like I said earlier, the cheating within the lines. For example, an excerpt from this book is the blown diffuser era of Formula One that he was responsible for starting and getting a huge advantage. Absolutely fascinating perspective on how and why he engineered or designed things the way he did. And it breaks down the larger teams that are the engineering of Formula One. There is a lot to it. Definitely recommend a fascinating read. So number 2 actually showed up on a lot of different lists when I tried looking for automotive books. The interesting part was when I went to the bookstore to actually pick this up, the person who helped me find it said that they absolutely loved it, and at the end they cried. And when I asked them if they were interested in cars or racing or anything, no, they absolutely had zero interest in any of that stuff at all. So when I picked up The Art of Racing in the Rain, I really wasn't sure what to be expecting because it has much acclaim and is actually now a movie as well. Interestingly, a lot of the automotive shots in the movie, or racing shots, were shot at Mosport Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. That's pretty cool. Anyway, back to the book. Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth Stein is fantastic. It's told from the dog's perspective, which if you're a dog lover, that's already a win. But it's interestingly enough about the coming of age of a family man, you know, some struggles that he goes through. Obviously wants to be a racer. He was an instructor and goes through that story, but talks about the romance of him having a family and some turmoil that comes within. It is a fantastic perspective of this life and is a great read. You'll love it. It's very easy to read. It keeps you going. This should almost be number 1, but due to the fact that it's fictional, I think this for me is not right up my particular alley, but it should be up everyone's. It should be on everyone's list if you're looking for a car book or not. Absolutely loved it. If you don't like to read, watch the movie. You'll get the gist. Of course, the book, as always, is better than the movie. Okay, so we got here. We're at number 1, Mark the Elvis Priestley's book, The Mechanic. Secret Life of the Formula One Pit Lane. That should say enough. This was a gentleman who went through the era of money coming into Formula One. Tons of it. Lots of fun, lots of partying, lots of marketing, but also talks about the journey of having to work hard and establish himself within the team. You don't really think too much about the guy who's putting the nuts on the tires and making sure that the wheel is on the car. Nuts on tires is not the right way to say that, but you know what I mean. There's a lot more to it. And the background of this individual and talks about the drivers and teams that he's worked with is just in general a fun read. So I do recommend it. It is a number 1 for me. I don't care which order you read these in. I do hope that you've enjoyed this list. I would appreciate a like, a subscribe, and I would really love a comment. If you've read these, let me know what you think. I'd love to talk about them a little bit more. Also, check out my merch, milk4coffee.ca. I've got some merch now. You're welcome to help by purchasing that. And I just want to say thank you for watching. It's 30 episodes deep now. As you know, we always go the same way, all gas, no brakes. Have a good one. This is nonfiction. Alexa, what's fiction?
Fiction is usually defined as the class of literature comprising works of imaginative narration, especially in prose form.
Alexa knows.